Hello you guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ayanda, and in today's video we're going to be speaking about Gathering Blossoms Under Fire by Alice Walker. And well, it's not by Alice Walker, it's Journals of Alice Walker, edited by Valerie Boyd. Besides the point, well, very much the point, but yes, this is the book that we're going to be discussing. And for the previous videos, let me tell you something. When I'm not filming, my English is top 2 and not number 2. But once I turn on the camera, it just runs away. Anyway, so last week, I said to you guys that whoever comments, or someone that comments on the video that I posted, not last week, the week before last, stands a chance of winning a book. And the person that won the book is Cindy Marotola. And is it Marotola? Let me confirm your name. Cindy, yes, it's Cindy Marotola. Yes, Cindy Marotola, I liked your comment. You said that I'm not only a great storyteller, but I'm a good actress as well. I like that. You know why? Because I always thought I'd be an actress. When I was young, I thought I would be on TV, you guys. I hope you guys are watching this video on TV. Please watch this video on TV so you make my dreams come true. Yes, but I'm glad that you saw that in me. I'm glad that the talent and the yearning for acting has not gone away. And for that comment and for affirming my artistic skills, you win a book. Just text me, drop me a DM at ayanda.mugwana on Instagram. Just send the DM. And Olerato, you have not texted me about your 100 Rand airtime. If you don't text me by this week, I'm just going to give the airtime to someone else. I'll have to pick someone else from those comments from that other video for the airtime. Oh my God, I'm giving so much away. Is this why people give? My ego is... I'm kidding. Olerato, dude, I'm broke. So I need you to text me so I give you the airtime. Also, please drop me a DM. I know I said text me on Facebook, but just drop me a DM at ayanda.mogwana on Instagram. And your service provider, and I'm gonna send you airtime. Yes, those are the winners. I also told you guys that I'm considering making giveaways for books each time I upload a video. I liked the response on Facebook and on my community tab. People are willing to pay for their own courier if I give away the book. So that's in the process. I just have to make sure that I have enough books for the videos that will be going up. And yes, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry I didn't upload last week. It has been raining cats and dogs, and it has just been impossible to film. But I'm back, and I'm wearing a purple jersey, reading a purple book, speaking about the writer who wrote The Color Purple. Is this not artistry? Anyway, let's get into the video. So, Gathering Blossoms Under Fire are journals written by Alice Walker. If you guys don't know who Alice Walker is, she's an activist, writer, novelist, essayist, poet, filmmaker, just a multi-talented girl. She's multi-talented. And fun fact, because I think I'm going to forget this, she was close friends with Martin Luther King. So that's really cool. Alice Walker has written the book The Color Purple, but has written many other books as well. If you don't know The Color Purple, watch the movie. If you've not watched the movie, if you can't watch the movie, read the book. If you can do both, do both. If you don't know what I'm talking about, where have you been living? These journal articles begin from the 1960s all the way to the 1990s, and they just chronicle her life as an emerging writer, all the way to an accomplished, very famous, widely known, and, well, successful writer. And you know what? My favorite part of the journal articles was certainly the 1960s, for many reasons, but most especially because she was in her early 20s, but the way that she was writing was well beyond her years. And seeing her pen at that age just so mature and so determined just was very encouraging and inspirational to me. Gathering Blossoms Under Fire, I think this is such a beautiful title. And this picture, South Africans should know, many people have alluded that she looks like Entle, and I agree. But that is besides the point. I'm going to get into the 5 lessons that I've gotten from Gathering Blossoms Under Fire by Alice Walker. And I think it's a beautiful book. Please don't feel like I'm ruining the book for you or I'm spoiling the book for you. even though there's going to be obvious spoilers, I still encourage you to read the book because it's just packed with so many gems, and I don't think I can just spoil it enough. I could never spoil it, actually. Even at my best attempt, I could never spoil it. So please check it out. And yes, lesson number 1, colorism is homemade. Much like racism, most of what we have come to know colorism as is just being made at home. People are taught to be colorist at home, but of course the system of racism and the system of colorism exist within a bigger beneficiary or a bigger cause. But for the most part, the lessons or the teachings of racism and colorism begin at home. Once you raise children to think that they are less than or they are more than because their skin tone is this way or that way, that's where you see the colorism and the racism be homemade. And I do believe, for the most part, people like to say when racists are caught, when a child is caught being racist or whatever, the first thing people say is, where are his parents? His parents must have taught him this. Because you cannot, especially as a white person, you can't afford to relax and not teach your child about racism. You can't just assume that your child is a good person. And the fact that there are no conversations about racism in your home gives us the impression, actually, that at some point you are comfortable with your child being in that gray area of not knowing, but also knowing that if they say something, they may get away with them because they are white. You know what I mean? So each time there's a racist outburst with children involved, or people just are racist, we usually just think, okay, that means everyone else at home is racist, because why do you behave like that and think it's okay, So in this book, Alice Walker has struggled a lot with colorism, especially as someone whose tone was slightly darker than that of her siblings. She says that she felt from her father, firstly, colorism tendencies were, well, for example, Alice Walker got an injury at a young age. One of her brothers shot her in the eye with a BB gun, and she says after that she felt very undesirable and very rejected by her father, whereas before she had gotten the injury, she felt very much affirmed, although not at the same capacity as her lighter skinned sister. But after the injury, now she has this eye that is looking different to the other eye and is also dark skinned. That's when she felt that, oh my goodness, my father really prefers my sister for many reasons, but mostly because she's lighter skinned than me. So also at some point in the book, she speaks of how much she misses her mother, but she says something as well but she's also colorist. She has this tendencies of saying things that just makes Alice feel better about her skin tone or her blackness. So you see how much, you guys, can you hear that? I'm gonna need to get a doom. Oh my goodness, these flies. Yes, so I'm saying colorism is homemade because in Alice's home, her parents were very much colorist, and I imagine she even made examples of how her brothers interacted with darker skinned women and versus white women or light skinned women. So you see how, for the most part, there is really two sort of parents. There are two parents that are going to acknowledge that black people exist and black people are people and are human, and parents that are going to just think, well, black people don't exist, or they exist but they're not human. And in a black household, there becomes it's the colorist aspect of it now. It's the two set of parents that think, oh my goodness, darker skinned girls or darker skinned people, but girls in this particular case, darker skinned girls are just, less than to a certain extent, you could have been light, So yes, colorism is homemade. I agree. All the races belong to families. All the colorists belong to families. And unless your family and your parents go out of their way to teach you against being colorist and racist, we're just going to assume that they are comfortable with you absorbing what the racism in the world says about black people. And that you could also, to some extent, also be racist, because you're not going out of your way to ensure that you unlearn the bigger racism or the bigger colorism that exists in the world. Lesson number 2, people are complicated creatures. So in this book, Alice Walker, you guys, Alice Walker was married to a lawyer, but has always had feelings for someone else. So this person is called Robert. At some point, Alice and her husband separate, and then she gets together with Robert. The problem is that Robert was married at the time, and the complication comes in the sense that Alice Walker proceeds to be in a relationship with Robert, even though Robert is married, but also Robert is not even hiding it as well. Robert's mother knows that Robert is dating Alice while he's also married, and Robert's wife also knows and acknowledges Alice as a present figure in Robert's life, to the point where she also makes advances towards Alice, like sexual advances. Not even to invite them to be together like threesome style, but to say, okay, I also like you, can we, but at some point they'd also been making advances to have threesomes together. But the wife seemed to also have an attraction to Alice, but Alice was not comfortable with having a relationship with the wife as well. But the complication does not even come to that. I'm used to those sort of settings where, couples have open marriages, or couples just have sex with whoever, and it does not mean anything. But what the complication came where I noticed how much Robert just sucked as a person and as a man, and how much grace, how much Alice gave him so much grace. He was lazy. Well, not lazy in the sense that, he was a tidy man, but he was lazy in the sense of, I'm a man, I'm going to make money. He was not making as much money as Alice, and that seemed to be creating a lot of tension between them, because he felt very much emasculated by Alice's success, to the point where Alice had to he was sponging off Alice, basically. On top of sponging off Alice, he was also doing the bare minimum as a partner as well. Remember, he cheated on his wife. He just continued to cheat the entire time. And although Alice only mentions one time where he had gone back to his hometown and he slept with his old girlfriend and came back and confessed, something within me tells me that men like Robert just never really change. And it surprised me how much Alice was willing to put up with him. His lack of finances, his tone, the way he spoke to her, and how much he was picking on every little aspect of Alice's life, and how he just consumed her in a way that, when you think of, I see Alice Walker as a really intelligent woman. And most of the time when you see people in toxic relationships, you don't think, oh my God, okay, you deserve that, but no, you don't think that. But also when they're intelligent and you see them as intelligent, you sort of expect them to make better decisions. But in the journal articles, you see her struggle between completely letting Robert go, or being realistic or logical about the sort of person that Robert is. Beyond anything, her love for Robert surpassed her ability to see him for the man that he was, which was a bum. Although, he wrote a book or so and was making some money. But I do think that, according to how I was seeing Alice at that point in her life and how I see her now, I think she should not have dated a man like Robert. Obviously, I can't say she should not have dated, because she's dated him, and that was in the 1970s and I was not born. But I don't like Robert. I think she could have done better, but I'm not going to say that. And even if I say it, I'm not going to change anything. So people are complicated because her friendships, her relationships with her siblings, I enjoyed how vulnerable and honest she was about how people were treating him and how she was treating people. Because Alice Walker herself was not the most perfect person. She pushed people away a lot and tends to be selfish in many aspects. But regardless, they still continued to love her. She could still continue to love people. As I'm reading the book, I'm like, could never be me. But there's probably things like that happening in my own life as well. But because I'm not writing about them, or reflecting on them as honestly as she is, then I think I could have a chip on my shoulder. Lesson number 3. This was very controversial, and it's still very much controversial. Alice Walker had made statements and written pieces on why having one child is the best course of action for women if they want to advance in their careers. And she made some, even in the journal articles, she made numerous times statements about how much being a mother just consumed her so, and how she felt like she could not do as much as she could, but it's also clear that she only has one child because she can do much more than she could have done had she had 2 or 3 or 4. Even made an example about this writer, forgot her name, who had 3 children, I think, but whose book took 30 years to write. And she said, I imagine how many more books she would have written had she not been a mother and wife. She believes that, I don't know if she still believes that today, but then in the journal articles and in the essays that she'd written and the interviews that she'd had, she believed that women or children and marriages just hold back women, and they tend to become women's work. So women just focus all their energies on their families, and by the time they want to be creative or want to write or want to sing or want to do whatever, they're just so tired. You've been chasing three children around the whole day. You're not gonna sit down for 2 hours and pour yourself into your novel or into your essays. So that was an interesting take, and I'm going to make another video to talk about how that changed my mind about children and about pregnancy. I think it should be a whole different discussion. But Alice Walker has one child. Her name is Rebecca Walker, who's also a writer. And after having Rebecca, Alice, I think, tied her tubes. It was a sort of operation, but it disabled her from continuing to have more children, which I am glad for, because she evidently she didn't like being a mom. It just was too much for her, and I like that. Also, she had Alice because firstly, she married her first husband, well, her only husband. She never got married after that. She married her husband because he was white. He was a white lawyer. They were in love, but they mostly married because they were defying the laws in that were not allowing interracial marriages. So they were like, we're gonna marry because we're revolutionary. The lawyer was Jewish, white, and had been supporting the black activist movements of the time. And then they had Rebecca, the child, because they were also not wanting the husband to be deployed to the military. So I'm not sure how that worked, but because they were pregnant or were having a newborn, the husband could not have been deployed to the military. So that's why they had a child. So most of her life is also closely tied to her activism. So yeah, but yes, she sucked as a mom. As the journal articles proceed, you see how much Rebecca starts to resent her when Rebecca comes into herself. Well, in the early journals, when Rebecca is like 7, 4 and whatever, Alice Walker praises Rebecca for her independence and how much she seems to not need her. Alice, she seems to not need her mother and seems to have her own mind and her own life and whatever. And Rebecca was living with her father at the time. But when during the early 90s to the late 90s, you see Rebecca now coming to herself and start to have real opinions about the way that she was raised, and she seemed very angry, rightfully so, that her mother and her father, because her father had gotten remarried to another woman, and Alice Walker was just rotating between the 2 houses, and her mother was too busy traveling and writing books. She says she felt neglected. I don't think Alice Walker really acknowledges or understands where Rebecca is coming from, because at some point they'd gone to therapy and well, not therapy, they were talking, I think arguing, and Rebecca told her mother that, well, you've raised me very neglectfully. And in the journal article, Alice Walker says, well, raise you I did, but also when I checked on Google, they seem to be in a good place. I checked Rebecca's Instagram, they seem to be in a good place. But at some point, Rebecca was also very angry with her mother and was making statements in the media, saying she's embarrassed that she's Alice Walker's child. Like, it's a lot. But the part of maternity and motherhood and pregnancy and children, I think I should make a separate video about it, because I think it has totally changed my mind. Like, totally. So after dating Robert, or during the whole Robert situation, when the relationship was dying out, we come to lesson number 3 now, which is saying sexuality, whatever you want to call it, is really just overrated. Alice Walker had begun having feelings for women, or had come to terms with her fascination with women's bodies and her feelings for wanting, women in her sheets and, romantically and otherwise. But when she would be asked, are you bisexual or what is this? She would say, well, I'm full. I'm not bi anything. I'm not half-half. I'm just me. I like anyone as long as they just, excite me. I'm willing to do it. But obviously now, oh Jesus Christ, obviously now we have the terms for many sort of things. But I found it very fascinating that although they had those terms even back then, Alice Walker was just like, don't put a label on me. I'm just me. Don't try to limit me to this or that and this and that. And it was such an interesting take. Although I'm not obviously saying people should not label themselves or should not identify as this or that, I found it very revolutionary for her to be like, why are you putting labels on me? I'm just, leave me alone, you know. So yes, that's lesson number 3. If you are feeling like you are struggling with your identity or labeling yourself, just don't do it. You don't have to do it. No one is going to hold a gun to your head and say, identify as this. And although you could also have the yearning within your heart and within you to think, oh my goodness, but I need to know what I am or who I am and all of those things. Sometimes you just have to come to a point where you're like, okay, you know what? I'm me. That should be enough. And this is also not to invalidate anyone that wants to label themselves and want to identify as this or that. But it is just to also say that if the labels are too much or are confusing or are just alienating to you, don't do it, baby. Don't do it. I found so much power in her deciding to not do it, and I hope you do as well. Lesson number 5, pursue your passions fully. As I've been saying, Alice Walker is a writer, writes all sorts of things, but for the most part is famous for The Color Purple, which is a novel. But after The Color Purple became a theater show and a musical and a movie, I think she realized that she really just likes filming and likes creating content like that, and then she began wanting to do more. Although in the beginning you see her struggle to identify especially herself as a writer. She was a consultant on the set when the movie The Color Purple was being filmed, and she had expressed how confusing everything was and how it did not make sense, but in the end they just seemed to work together or fall into place, and was just mesmerized, Jesus Christ, mesmerized by the directors and the actors and the actresses and all of those things. But towards the late 80s, early 90s, you see her now get into filming. She did a documentary on genital mutilations in Africa and also wrote a book on it. I wonder if she did more, but yes, that's the other filming prospect that I know she did. Also, you guys, what fascinated me the most about the whole thing, when they were filming the documentary, there was another writer, activist, who was also working to end genital mutilation in Africa, but was also displaced by Alice Walker. She didn't understand why Alice Walker was now suddenly interested in genital mutilation. So she didn't understand why Alice Walker was now interested in genital mutilation. She also is actually just saw it as just another famous American wanting to come to Africa, taking the spotlight from activists that have always done the work. And it's like, dude, if you're doing or working towards a cause and someone is coming and wanting to work towards the same cause, you really should just work together. No, but no, she was like, I think it was a she, yes, she was an active frictional force against Alice Walker's work against genital mutilation. Alice Walker would say this, she'd go to the media and say that, but what I learned from that as well, it actually reminded me of, do you guys remember Arundhati Roy? I've told you about her. She's written The God of Small Things, Azadi, and The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. In Azadi, which is a collection of essays, Arundhati Roy speaks of how after she wrote The God of Small Things, she took like a 10-year gap maybe and began writing essays, obviously politically motivated essays. And one time, she was at this event. On one hand, there's two men. There's a man on the side and there's a man on the other side. I think it was a literary event. The title of the essay in Azadi is "In What Language Does Rain Fall in Foreign Countries?" or something along those lines. Anyway, she's sitting there and one man says to him, "Oh my goodness, novels or fiction is such a pointless sort of literature. Why do you not just continue writing essays? You're so revolutionary, and every time you write essays or you write on true life, I notice how much your voice matters or how talented you are," and da. And then the man on her left goes, "Why did you write essays? I liked you more as a fictional writer. I don't think, this essay thing is I don't think you're gifted in that part. Also, you should just probably leave this thing to politicians or something along those lines. Basically, you have these two opposing forces, where one is saying stick to fiction and the other is saying stick to essays. And it's like she found herself in a position where she didn't understand, what about me is it that people don't understand that I'm a writer? It doesn't matter whether I'm going to write essays or I'm going to write novels. The bottom line would be that I'm a writer and I'm yearning to write, and I'm going to write about what I feel. So I felt the same thing when Alice Walker was doing she's always been an activist, and then when she continued to film the documentary about genital mutilation in Africa, how this specific person was against her, it sort of gave that thing, oh, you're a writer. What are you doing wanting to document, whether in writing or in film? Or what about you writing The Color People makes you think now you're qualified to be an activist against genital mutilation, or to make a film about genital mutilation? Like, people just want to limit you to what they think they know you as. Like, if you're an actress, stick to being an actress. Have you seen how each time an actress attempts to sing, people are just like, no, because we don't allow ourselves to see people as really multifaceted and multi-talented people. And I liked that Alice Walker continued to do her work. She's so talented. Her poetry, her novels, her essays, her interviews, every time she does something, you can tell she just really pushes herself into it. Even though she also hated public speaking, you could tell when, even in her interviews and her readings, you can tell she's putting and applying herself fully, because she really just likes the work that she does. So lesson number 5 is pursue your passions fully. Guys, I'm getting abused. So that is the end of the video. Another thing that I just remembered with the video is that, the lessons from the book is that grief is endless. Alice Walker had lost her grandfather and had lost her mother and had lost her father, but her mother died much later. Her father and grandfather were really complicated men, hey? Very adulterous, very abusive, but also very, it was difficult to, I liked how she was seeing them as everything at once. You know how many things can exist at once? People like this, oh my God, I know him. He could never do that. But Alice Walker in the journals was saying, okay, my father was a horrible man. My grandfather was a horrible man, but he was also very talented. And at this point and that point, he made me feel really loved. Or he was a community leader. Although he was a horrible husband, the community really loved him. And I appreciate the work that he did in the community. But also to say, they were really horrible men. When her father died, she said, my father died, I don't have to express a civility I don't feel. But towards the end of the articles or the journals, you see how much she starts yearning for her father, and at random times would start missing him, or would start reminiscing about the time when he was sort of warm to her, and would just be sad that her father had died. And it was such an interesting thing, especially with the death of AKA as well. It made me reflect on how much, sometimes a person, you're angry at a person and are disappointed by a person, or maybe you really just dislike a person, and then they die and you also feel like, oh my goodness, that stings. I'm really saddened by this person's passing, because beyond them being that horrible person or being the person that they were, they also were really talented and, did so much for the country and all of those things. So the multifacetedness of life and of people sticks out in the journals, and it was really inspiring to see how Alice Walker was able to see people wholly as they were and still accepted them. I hope I get to that place where I don't just box people into one thing or into one event or into one treatment or whatever. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I missed you so much. For the winners, can you please text me, drop me a DM, and I'm going to see you guys next week. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and yeah, that is it. My name is Ayanda. Thank you guys for watching until here, and bye bye.